Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. This will be the final episode of the Radfam book. We have dug quite deep into it, and when I decided to scan ahead a little bit, there was just stuff about Donald Trump, a lot of opinionated stuff that doesn't really have to do with the Radfam philosophy, so I skipped, like 6 pages ahead. Just because it wasn't really something that we could use to argue with, And then there was stuff about Judith Lewis Herman and just kind of a bit of what we've already read, in a way. So let's continue where I feel there's some meat for us to munch on. Bismillah. Male violence at the highest levels of government has been tolerated for a very long time. Unfortunately for these men, women are no longer quite so willing to keep their mouths shut about it as they once were. Now, it's interesting. Tolerated. Male violence being tolerated. I watched today some information on King John of England, Vlad the Impaler, and Ivan the Terrible, and Nero of Rome. And lots of men were victims of these rulers. And common folk, rich folk, really nobody escaped the wrath of rulers. And it was Nero's mother who poisoned, I believe, her husband, Nero's father, so her son could take the throne. If you look at what women have done in history, they are not as innocent little angels, not to mention Mary Tudor, the Catholic, who burned Protestants. So, let us be reasonable here. Men and women commit atrocities and endure atrocities. This means that even voters who don't really care about male politicians assaulting women know that on some level they should care. I think a lot of people do care. But the thing comes in where you want evidence, because we know liberal women often, sadly, I do believe, as do others, it's a way of dishonoring the male opponent, and it's a political stratagem that is used as a tool. Believe all women is just not something you can do. I've known women who've lied, and there are so many women who would be willing to lie to save their own ass, as we put it, to be blunt. So I'm not just gonna believe everyone. Some people have an agenda, a vendetta. There's so much incentive for women to always place themselves as the victim and not take accountability for their poor choices. So someone's like, so-and-so did something to me 20 years ago. Okay, do you have any proof? No. Okay, so it's just he say, she say. And I'm supposed to believe you just because you're a woman. No. And I think if you love your sons, your uncles, you wouldn't want just some wicked woman to cry some crocodile tears and then get them thrown in prison and have their life ruined. We can't have a society like that, This means that even, here we go. Nobody is more anxious to win the cultural war than those who have already lost the moral argument. The way these men choose to behave towards women is not incidental to the way they behave in office. It's not a side issue. It's not a private matter. The way politicians treat women and children informs their attitude towards everything else. Okay, yeah, the way you treat children says a lot about you. Okay, so let's look at how many women and how they treat children. How does a female politician treat her constituents? It would be grand if we could get an investigation into all the shenanigans that female politicians get into of corruption, bribery, not doing their job, smuggling funds where they're not supposed to. How many codes are they breaking? How many female politicians cut funding for certain programs? We shouldn't think just because someone has female genitalia that somehow their heart is going to have affection towards children. I mean, there's female abortionists. All right? I think if you can abort a baby, that you really don't have a heart. Men who bully, grope, and harass because they feel entitled to do so will treat the electorate the same violent contempt. Okay, I was looking at how Justin Bieber, go look it up, how many women just would grab him, paw on him, kiss on him, and a lot of these rat femmes are crickets. Oh, he's a boy, so it's okay. No, it's not. And the Hodge twins described how they were molested as children. Very heartbreaking. Very horrible. There's a lot of little boys who have stories that where women violated them. And they felt titled because it's a woman. Joe Rogan jokes about, I wish I would have had a teacher like that. A lot of men normalize female predators. And if I have a son and you do something, well, I'm not going to let you go just because you're a woman. Okay. Institutions that cover up and technically condone abuse will operate similarly. Xual, I'm going to say it weird just because, you know, I don't always want the heavy words to be in the videos. And abuse are central to our political culture. Okay. Now, do you hear what she just said? That American politics and American culture is centered around abuse and violation of the human body. Where is the evidence for that? Where is that? I have never seen a politician advocate for these things. And women are part of the political culture in America, so they have to share some of the blame. You can't just say every single woman in politics is innocent, that they don't see what happens. I don't see that at all. Not least because they create something that men like Trump have always relied on. They create complicity, and complicity rallies the troops far faster than loyalty. So complicity, rallying people faster than loyalty. She's got Trump derangement syndrome. I think she likes Trump in a secret fetish way. In a similar way, over the past decade, there has been an outcry against the sexual abuse of children within some of our oldest institutions of power, from foster homes that were supposed to care for our most vulnerable young people, to the boarding schools that were supposed to educate the most fortunate, all the way up to the top Catholic Church itself. Organizations justified their very existence by their mission to offer guidance to the needy, direction to the lost. Okay. I don't think the culture accepts it. I just think that the evil exists. And no, you can't, like, we've never really been able to get rid of legit parasites. Neither in fish. You see how many rats have parasites. It's a very hard thing to do. We can't even get rid of all the mosquitoes. The thing about humans is you don't know the evil within right away just by looking at them. Sometimes you can. Other times, you really can't. So it's harder to tackle evil in humans because evil can have a smile, can have a mask. That's why I watch a lot of true crime, because some of these people, you wouldn't suspect it. The other day I watched one on EW, Explore With Us. 15-year-old boy did an atrocity to a 10-year-old girl, his stepsister. And like, how do you see that coming? You know? It's sad. For decades, the abuse of children by teachers and religious leaders was the stuff of popular comedies and folk wisdom. Everyone had heard the one about the altar boy. That's true. I gotta say, the one about the altar boy is true. That's why I've never taken... I'm Muslim, obviously. But when my first child was born, I wasn't a Muslim. I never took my kids to any type of Catholic gathering. And the sacrificial wine. But the men who hurt these children were never made to answer for their shameful abuses. Take that up with the Vatican. Okay? You gotta put some pressures on the Vatican. It was the children themselves who were expected to swallow the shame in silence. And when too many spoke up, The institutions closed ranks to move the offenders on new postings. That's true, the Pope did shuffle them around. Sacrifice the victims to protect the power's image of itself. Yeah, that's wrong. The threat of sexual violence for men is associated with situations of absolute powerlessness, usually and crucially institutional powerlessness. Boarding schools, prisons, religious institutions. Decades before the Catholic Church was forced to acknowledge the endemic nature of child abuse by its clergy, the idea of the predatory priest was so common that it had been absorbed into popular narrative. So popular narrative, yeah, I mean, she has a point right there. The Catholics, that's why whenever you see these Tommy Robinson types, they're just going after Muslims, pretending as if Christians don't have their own atrocities. I always find that quite odd. But to be honest, I think that every group has a problem with that. Just because, like I said, evil, Shaitan, and his legions, they are everywhere. So you have to just be cautious as a parent. The body politic should react against these ideas. Instead, it reabsorbs the uncomfortable truth into its narrative. Now, does she say anything about the rainbow flag, about guys doing pride parades, exposing children to the nudity and fetishes of the rainbow flag when they march down the street? Children are present. Do they ever talk about that? No. So I don't think she really cares about the victims of the, what about these men who were trying to breastfeed newborns? It's absolutely disgusting. And it was allowed to happen. She doesn't mention that. This is how power works in patriarchy, right through to the top. Now see, if I was a leader in a matriarchy, if you think that there wouldn't be any violence, you're just totally mistaken. To sit here and think that a woman can rule with just no iron fist, no military, no threat of force, you're wrong. Men aren't going to look at the beauty of the woman leader and just get on their knees and treat her like a goddess. Like, you're so special, we will never rebel against you. And to think that the women wouldn't be vying for her position, that women as well wouldn't plot against the female ruler, is just dishonest. Women are plenty mean to each other. So it's not really the patriarchy. The British boarding schools that educate some of my home country's most elite politicians, oh, so she's British, that's right, have been revealed in the past decade to be hotbeds of coercion and abuse. Ritual humiliation in childhood is still considered a necessary forming part of the character of modern citizen. Okay, so she said humiliation rituals? Yeah, you gotta teach your kid not to be part of that type of humiliation ritual. I tell my kids to have honor. Don't let no one humiliate you in a way that's depraved. But that means you gotta stay out of those circles. You gotta stay out of the sororities and the fraternities that have those types of hazing rituals. You gotta know what you're getting into, is my point. Part of the character of the modern citizen, and sexual and gender-based shaming has always been part of that obligatory informal curriculum. In mixed gender schools in Britain, sexual abuse and harassment of girls has become so endemic as to go unnoticed, according to activist Somra Sarah, who collected thousands of accounts of victimizations in schools. So if we said separate the girls and boys, she would say you're oppressing the girls. Okay, keep the boys away from the girls. Boys don't have the same sense of humor. They just don't. Making boys into gentlemen is really quite difficult. And girls are just as vicious. Just as vicious. It is at schools and colleges that boys learn how to become men by shaming women so as not to be shamed themselves. By performing violence so that violence may not be done to them in turn. Those who are victims of abuse learn to normalize abuse, especially when they are very young, and especially when what abuse comes at the hands of those in positions of care and authority. When you cannot escape being hurt, it is dangerous to turn your rage on the people who have hurt you. Better to blame and shame the victims. That way, you can stay safe. The redirected shame calcifies into a culture of silence. Okay, so the culture of silence. Often it is women who are tasked with being the enforcers of that silence, to shame other women into shutting up, to protect the men they work for or rely on for their own status. There are, at least she admits that there are some women who are part of the problem. They may not like doing it, but they may also have little choice. So, the madams, who are female pimps, who coerce girls into doing things they don't want to do, every pimp has what they call a bottom bitch. That's the one who brainwashes the young females into doing things they shouldn't. She takes on this demonic motherly role and really doesn't care. That's why the occultic witch is so dangerous. She pretends to care for you, but she's really trying to destroy you and likes watching the lamb be mauled. Okay? There are plenty of women who enjoy watching the destruction of their fellow females. They may not like doing it, but they may also have little choice. Women are the ones hired for the thankless roles that boil down to decades spent soothing male ego. No, thankless roles. A lot of men who maintain the infrastructure don't get thanked by women. Smoothing male egos and greasing the wheels of power by making all the difficult and dirty things go away. If you're a secretary and you're dealing with, organizing a guy's schedule, that's really not that bad of a job. Women come in with the bucket to clear up the mess men make, including for other women. And if they refuse to do so, they can find themselves scrubbed away in turn. Well, the people who clean up the messes, how many times, I bet, has there been women who've thrown a party, a prostitute escort OD'd, she died, and she's got to call in these guy goons to come and take the body away. I bet you the majority of men who make corpses disappear, is quite alarming. Women wouldn't be the corpse clearers. It would be men going and hiding the mess that some rich politician's son made or whatever. Very few women are going to be lugging around corpses heavier than their own bodies. So, I don't agree with this. Because the ones who clean up a mess depends on the type of mess you're cleaning. A lot of men can fix things up as well. Harvey Weinstein was surrounded by female assistants who ferried starlets to his hotel room. Exactly. Or actively worked to make sure he could dine alone with whoever was on the menu that day. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he was a creep. But it was known in the industry. Hollywood those women accepted that, and it's very sad. Women have chosen to support their husbands, their bosses, their fathers, time and time again, rather than supporting and believing one another. And often that decision has made absolute sense. It is often safer to enable the abusers than acknowledge the abuse. Social mechanisms are in place to keep women isolated from one another. No, they're not. Women are not isolated in America. College campuses, women all together. You go to work, women all together. There is no gender segregation at all. At all. Competing with each other. Yes, women compete in beauty. That you pitted against each other for the attention and favors of men at work and outside it. Yeah, because you got a small window and your beauty is what gets you secured. It's a mating strategy, a survival strategy. Polygamy allows women not to have to compete so hard. Because the man doesn't have to just choose one woman for, 30, 40 years. He can have multiple women and they'll be provided for and taken care of. But women do this. You can't change that about women. That's can I stop the crow from searching for worms in the lawn? No. Can I stop the squirrel from going for the acorn? No. Women always see each other as threats. Even lesbians would compete with each other. Mating is competition for so many creatures. Even insects. If you look how there's these spiders, they do a little dance. They're fuzzy. I don't remember what they were called. And they would do this little dance, and the girl spider's like, hey, and he has to do a dance to like entice her. There's so many males that have to compete with other males to impress the female before they get to breed. So mating competition is something that happens everywhere. Humans, both the unique thing about men and women of the human species is that men and women both compete. It's not just males competing for females or women competing. It's both. Because you're gonna, if you found your prize, you're gonna compete for that prize because you want it. Competition is natural to survival. This has been long been the implicit attitude of institutions across the political spectrum, from the Republican Party to the Nobel Prize Foundation. He's not mentioning Democrats at all. It's so trash. It is incorrect to suggest that these institutions have never had strategies in place to deal with sexual assault and abuse. It's merely that these strategies so far have been variations on the theme of just make sure nobody talks. Okay, you're gonna sit here and pretend that left-wingers, whether you have the progressives, the liberals, the neoliberals, the Democrats, the blue dog Democrats, the Dixiecrats, leftists, the anarchists, the social justice, the, what are they called? Social democratic, Kyle Kalinske and Cenk Uygur, socialist Democrats, I forgot what they were called. Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kalinske made that political party. Justice Dems or something? You're gonna sit here and pretend that they don't have corruption to be like, hey, hush hush. Come on now. Come on now. The strategy has been to tolerate a certain amount of abuse as normal, to protect abusers and sideline survivors. The test for organizations and institutions in the years to come will not be whether or not abusers can be found amongst their ranks, but how they deal with them when they are. Well, you're gonna have to try your best. I mean, you can't root out evil, you know? But I'm not just gonna believe someone because they're a woman, I'll tell you that. You're right. Okay. There's just stuff here about the Me Too movement. If you want to read more about the Me Too movement, go ahead. And like she mentions things right here about AOC that was just factually incorrect. When she was saying she was at the Capitol on J6, it has been proven she was not where she was. She staged her white suit border photo op. She's just a very dishonest human being who got changed by politics. She was a bartender, went to the big Capitol Hill, and Nancy Pelosi collected her as an egg. AOC is a charlatan. I don't believe anything she says, and that is my bias. So I'm not gonna give airtime to her. Just a bunch of stuff about AOC, saying how great she is, and no. Okay. Now this is the last page. Resistance is an intimate art. It works from the inside out. It starts when you start to realize that wherever you are, whatever you have done, you deserve to live. You deserve to be part of the society that nurtures life and makes it worth living. And it's not too late to make one. You can claim your part of a better, braver world. Brave new world. When you know in your bones that you are worthy of it. That you are enough for the future that is coming, ready or not. And then the rest is just, I'll give her props for having proper citations. I like that. So she got a nice index and good citations. Here's what she looks like. Yes. For so much of the book, I did not know what she looked like. Because I didn't go all the way to the back. You know? So we have read Subhan Allah. Look at that. I mean, the only time we really went past any pages was towards the end with what does AOC have to do with rad femme philosophy? But she wants to show examples, which I get. You want to show examples to elicit your point. She was very radical. Very radical. I am disgusted with what she wants for the world. She does, she's very into Hollywood, so I think she should write more about the grotesqueness of Hollywood rather than American politics. You know what I mean? Because when she keeps mentioning Me Too, a lot of the Me Too stuff is because of Hollywood. Okay. She really went in, remember, she really didn't like white heterosexual male Christians. I mean, whew. I don't like calling people bigots. I think she has a right to write this, but if the roles would reverse, the book wouldn't be on the shelves. So it does puzzle me how a book that attacks the white race, it was published in a corporate bookstore. I'm not going to name it because I'm not trying to get the bookstore into trouble. But, I'm not a book burner unless it's like some graphic sex ed book that's unnecessary for the age group it's directed towards. But I'm not convinced of her philosophy. If you want to read it, I would say... Okay, let me just read the title. Lorri Penney, this is a story about how modern masculinity is killing the world and how feminism can save it. It's a story about sex and power and trauma and resistance and persistence. And at the heart of that story is one simple idea. We are in the middle of a sexual revolution. Modern fascism and the feminists fight back. I mean, that's a long title. I mean, it's a long title. So at least it tells me exactly what I needed when I saw it, because it was propped on the... I'm like, where's your most radical feminist book? I was on a mission. Found it, was sitting right there. I don't think there was too many copies left, if I recall. But we found it. And go back through the series, okay? If you haven't watched those, you'll see exactly what she means. And I feel like I have done a great service to Islam by going through her text, presenting a different perspective, because the way in which you take away the mysteriousness of these women is to go line by line, really dig in and analyze, do textual analysis of their works. And I have dedicated, this will be 86 videos. So 86 videos on this woman's book. I'm not monetized, so it's not like I'm getting paid or anything. But just as an act of service for others who don't know how to handle such texts. And being an American revert to Islam, I don't agree with her on other things. She had some interesting stuff about incels, and that was interesting to read about. Okay. Does she represent her philosophy well? I think so. Should women behave like her? I think not. Because she shames heterosexual relationships and really frames motherhood as this oppressive thing. I don't think I would want to have someone like that in my family or as a close friend. You have to watch out for women like that, I'd argue. So I'm going to put it in the recycle bin. I can't keep every book, so I'm not going to keep it, but I've done justice to it. And she's, obviously, since I bought it, she's already got her proceeds from it. But I'm going to put it in the recycle bin. Another book down. Mashallah, tabarakallah. I don't see how she proved fascism at all. She attacked capitalism. She was kind of a Marxist. Mussolini's fascistic Italy coming out in this doesn't make sense. She has a lot of contradictions as well, as I pointed out in the text. The fact she supports adult content is really quite alarming. Quite alarming, because that a long time ago I posted a quotes of Marxist feminists who were against adult content. Okay? So, she's a Marxist rat femme. And she's on Twitter, by the way. Don't harass her. But it's funny how Twitter put her in my feed when I never looked her up. It's kind of spooky, to be honest. Maybe they somehow Google's like, you were reading this book, here, follow them. But I took the time. I did, you know, some people, they don't do this. They watch a 2-minute video of somebody and then refute that easy video. I took time, hours of my free time, digging into what she had to say. I gave her a fair shake. And I think before you criticize someone, you should read what they say. And I did that. She likes to insult men a lot, calling them fragile. Just straight up disrespect. A very bitter, hateful woman, I must say. And she also mentioned she's an easy girl. Gives it up by the 3rd date. And then you can see that she probably got recycled a lot herself. And has a vendetta against men. That's my theory. That's my theory. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I also refute other feminists on my blog. If you like to read more stuff. I also have plenty of videos and community posts. If you'd like to join my blog, you can go to www.subscribestar.com/MillenArchive. Hope to see you there. Take care. 86 videos. Dun, 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 dun. Take care.